The first time I met Andrea Moore, I was trapped on a boat with terrible seasickness. When my initial cure-all of excessive amounts of white wine didn't make me feel any better, I decided to distract myself by sitting at a table full of strangers. What I found there was an eclectic group of talented, funny, and like-minded individuals who made me forget completely that I was green in the gills. I should probably mention that this boat was part of the National Young Audiences Conference, so talking to strangers here was a pretty safe bet. But there was one person at the table who stood out above the others, and I knew immediately that we would be friends, if not colleagues, and maybe someday even take over the world together. She was a force of nature whose intelligent passion permeated through my nausea. As a new member of the National Young Audiences family, I was so gratified to know that across the country there are people dedicating their lives to the betterment of humanity through the arts. Beyond the fact that we had a mutual friend in common and a shared childhood practicing the theatrical arts, I knew there was something special about this woman. When I got home, I checked out her website and watched a video of one of her short presentations. By the end, I was in tears and so inspired. I ran into our break room, grabbed a paper plate and some markers, and made this. It says, "Service is a circle, and no one is the last stop. Service is a circle, and no one is the last stop. Service is a circle, and no one is the last stop." And, where am I? It has been perched on the entrance of my cubicle for almost 2 years now. And it reminds me daily that when things get rough on my ego, that I am in this for the service of others. Andrea Moore is equal parts activist and artist. She believes in inclusion on every level and understands that the perfect world can be created here and now, and not in some time and place in the proverbial distance. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome to the Arts Abilities Conference and to Western New York, Ms. Andrea Moore.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I'm so touched. I love the circle is a circle and no one is, service is a circle and no one is the last stop is from a previous presentation I gave, and it's exciting. You never know where your words end up. You never know when you're permeating through someone's nausea what kind of impact you're actually having. So that's really exciting. So thank you, Buffalo, for having me here. I'm from Denver, Colorado. And I have never been to your beautiful city, and I am so excited to be here today. I got a little bit of the mini grand tour last night from Nancy and Alex, and I look forward to continuing the exploration this weekend. So I think Denver and Buffalo have quite a bit in common, and it's just, and that is evidenced by every person that I have met so far. So thank you for having me. Are we being invaded by aliens? Because I know everyone's thinking that. If we can. Oh, it's the owl. Oh, the owl just got kicked out of the building. Oh, I'm sorry, sweet baby owl. Okay, well now we all know if we hear the aliens, it's the owl, and everybody wants to feel included. Inclusion is a really important thing. So, I have been thinking about process. I have been thinking about police evidence boards. How they pin the suspect's photos to the wall when they're trying to crack a case. I have been thinking about math equation chalkboards, about brainstorms and workspaces, and places where people make sense of things, where they synthesize ideas. I have been thinking less about the wow and more about the how we get there. I have been thinking about process. I like a process that reframes product as byproduct, offshoot, spin-off, side effect, that puts the focus on the fact that getting it wrong is interesting. And getting it right is fine, but it's the struggle that is truly sacred. And this shit takes a lot of time. So I have been thinking about process. Earlier this year, I traveled to Mount Rushmore. Now, in the most sacred of all the indigenous Lakota lands, our government carved the heads of 4 white men on a mountainside. You almost have to admire the sheer audacity of it. the blinding, self-obsessive arrogance that fueled a feat of such engineering, of such social, civic, and creative magnitude. I've seen hundreds, maybe thousands, of this monument to power, privilege, and progress. I've regarded it with suspicion and derision. But in real life, I have to admit it's impressive as hell. The thing about beautiful art is that it can stir the spirit despite all the reasons that we should despise it, reject its right to be. Mount Rushmore moved me for many reasons, but one of the most astonishing things about it is that it is finished. It is a tremendously well-executed product in all its awful irony. It was hard to make, and it took a lot of money and a lot of manpower, but they did it, and it's done. Just down the road. And in response to an invitation from a Lakota elder in the 1940s, a rambling family of Polish Americans and local skilled workers is carving Crazy Horse into a mountainside. Crazy Horse, who never signed a treaty, who never learned English or lived on a reservation, who toppled Custer at Little Bighorn less than a year before he ended up dead, a bayonet in his back before his 40th birthday. Crazy Horse, who never even allowed himself to be photographed. Forget about tintype. This is the man whose likeness they are carving into granite on the face of a mountain. So, yes, it's complicated and controversial. The Crazy Horse Memorial is so enormous, they say that all 4 of the Mount Rushmore heads could fit inside his ear. His face alone is 9 stories high. The entire mountain is a work in progress, and once finished, the monument will depict this famous warrior in the round, riding astride his horse, pointing to the lands where his people are buried. If Mount Rushmore is product, Crazy Horse is process. There is no date by which they promise to unveil the finished monument. The family-run foundation has twice turned down government funds that would speed up the process because they believe in the power of private enterprise. The work is funded by private donations and entrance fees paid by people who come to see this crazy dream take shape for themselves. I read a story about Ruth, the artist's widow, and how when some reporters asked her when the memorial would be finished, how she responded. And so she looked to the sky and she feigned contemplation. And then she said, on a Tuesday, I think. She died last May, so she didn't live to see it. And neither did her husband, the artist. And frankly, I don't think I'll live to see it either. But I'm not really sure that that matters. You can see the monument from the road. Don't. Pay your $11 and get in there. A finished product is a beautiful thing, and Rushmore delivers. But a functioning process is sacred and beautiful. It isn't just a punchline, but a window into the whole complicated, painful, precious story. Crazy Horse is emerging from the dust of controversy, hard work, and core values, towering over the Avenue of the Chiefs. At a bend in the road, there's a hand-painted sign, unassuming. And in curling script, it promotes the memorial's motto, never forget your dreams. So, I was deeply impacted by my experience visiting both Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse. And this theme of process versus product is following me around. And I'm really, really interested in it. And I feel like it's exactly what is so relevant to our work as teaching artists. And so before I go on, I know this is the choir and that I'm about to preach to you. So I want to get a sense of who you are, right? Because I don't want to pretend like you don't already know these things. We're just going to make it more conversational. So please, if you don't mind, let me just see a show of hands if you are a core teacher, that you're teaching in a core classroom where you're teaching math or science or English or anything like that in a K through 12 environment. 0, 1, yes. We love your work. Thank you. And so how many of you are teaching artists? Okay. And so you, by teaching artists, I mean you're going into many schools, more than one, yeah? Okay, and then how many of you are administrators? Okay, some, many. What am I missing? Who is not represented by what I just said? Oh, your art and music teacher. Okay, so we have K through 12 teachers here who are part of the core things, but who are teaching subjects that are specific to art and music. Got it. Is that everybody more or less? Okay, but we are definitely the choir, right? That is who we are. So basically, I want to talk about a few different things today, but the first thing I want to tell you is that, and this applies to all of us, because I know administrators, you all come from teaching, right? Education is the world that we're all a part of. So I have some bad news for you, and I don't know if anyone has told you this yet, but you are no longer the gatekeepers to knowledge. And I know that's an ego blow. This is serious, like through human history, for 2,000 years more of human history, teachers were the gateway to knowledge. For the last 20 years, that has been rapidly dismantling, and it's over almost everywhere in the world. Google is the gateway to human knowledge. Truly. Teachers are not in charge anymore of what people do and do not know. And they were forever, right? So this is, to me, I'm like, at first that's terrifying, because it's like, oh God, they're going to learn all the worst things. And they do, right? They will. But then also it's just like something for me as a teacher. I felt really empowered when I realized that. I was like, why am I chasing, and of course we all know that because of core requirements and things like that, that hasn't caught up to that yet, right? So you're being put in a really impossible situation, because you're being asked to produce the what, like the what you teach, and show metric that says, these metrics can prove that I'm teaching what these kids need to know, and they are learning it, and I can prove it with this data. But the reality is that now moving forward, really kids can learn whatever they want, usually faster, more efficiently, in their own setting than in a classroom setting, or with each other side by side. And we see this with like the Khan Academy and like new cloud schools that are being developed, and all of the the money and the technology and the exciting things that are going on that are spurring that kind of technology, leaving a typical classroom setting in this really frustrating place where it's not efficient, you're not being allowed to do what you want to do, and everybody's just kind of in this like weird fake place of trying to like robotically generate all of these metrics. Nobody's having fun anymore. My mom is a teacher, my sister's a teacher, my best friend is a teacher. And in their experience and in mine witnessing them, not a lot of people are having fun anymore. And it's hard for us to keep the really talented teachers in the classroom. So I look at this as an opportunity. Instead of focusing on product, even though I do understand that that's what we're asked to do, so we're going to thread a needle here. But instead of focusing on product, I'm really interested in process. Instead of focusing on what, I'm really interested in how. Because the thing that we have to offer our students is how to navigate the world of knowledge. Not what they learn. They're going to find a faster way. And I just even talking to Alex, if you guys do Alex's workshop later today about like what's coming with technology, I'm like, oh my God, it takes me 2 seconds to feel super old. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, like kids are they're faster than me. Like even if you're in the technology, they're faster, they're better. They're going to be like, miss, you're dumb. And then the second they lose respect for what you know, if what is what you're trying to teach them, if they lose respect for what you know, then you've been skipped. You're no longer needed to them, right? But people with experience, what I have to offer a student is my experience on this planet. Not even just in a classroom setting, but my experience on this planet. And to me, it seems like what we need on this planet are a few like major skills. The first one for me is it's about navigating. It's about the how, right? So navigating difference is the one that I'm really interested in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit else about where I come from and why navigating difference is so important to me. So I'm a white girl from the suburbs of Colorado. I come from just outside of Denver. I grew up in a really homogenous environment. We went to a really big high school, and it was one of those high schools where it was like 95% white prep kids, and then there was like this other little cafeteria where there was like the table of Asian kids, the table of black kids, the skaters, the stoners, right? And high school really hasn't changed that much, I don't think, in a lot of cities all over this country. But so that's where I come from. So I was always one of those kids, like I think a lot of people are, of just like really wanting to be included, really wanting to include other people, and really wanting everyone to be the same, and really wanting everybody to get along, and having zero practical skill set for actually navigating those worlds, right? I didn't have any black friends, but I was desperate to not be racist, right? So how do we do that? How do we like get that skill set of like getting out there and interacting? So for me, and this is about to come back around, but I had an experience where I started working as a camp counselor at a summer camp for kids with special needs. So this is where the abilities part kind of is very near and dear to my heart. So I started working mostly with kids who experience Down syndrome, autism, cerebral palsy, other cognitive and developmental differences. And I fell in love. And I was afraid at first because I have a theater degree. So when I was asked to do this, my mom's friend was the program director, and she was like, will you please come and do this and be a part of it? And I was like, I don't have that skill set. I don't have any experience. I don't know how to do that. She was like, none of that matters. You're a theater kid. You'll be fine. And which is true about theater kids. We're almost always fine. Right? Right? This is real. I had a lot of heat from my family when I wanted to have a theater degree, and still to this day, there's still this like latent chatter that we do around art kids. But we know, because we're the choir, we know that actually the skill set that the rest of the world needs is the skill set that we learn in the arts, right? Creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, communication. Are those the 4 C's? Those are the 4 things I learned in theater school, above all else, right? So it's true. I went into that environment of working with people with special needs, having no therapy training, right? Nobody needs camp training, right? Everybody can figure that out. Like, go have fun in the mountains. Okay, fine. And I fell in love because for the first time in my life, this is where service as a circle comes up. And these are like some of these fundamental truths that take time, but they start ticking into place. For the first time in my life, I learned that it isn't about me providing a service and making someone else feel whole. That any choice I ever make as a human being is in my own quest to feel whole. My own quest to feel whole. I want to feel whole. I have special needs, right? I need to feel loved and accepted and not judged. And so I go into environments where I think I have a shot at that, where I can feel useful, right? Where I feel like I'm making a difference. That's about me. I work in East Africa. Every year I go to Uganda, and I work with some young people who have been orphaned by the AIDS epidemic. That's about me. A lot of people meet me, and they're like, oh my God, oh, you work with special needs. Oh my God, you work in Uganda. You're a saint. I know you guys get this too. Because anybody in the social services, it's so weird. You're like, how am I allowed to be a normal person and like actually have all of my judgments and hate all of these people and still have people telling me that I'm a good person and still be whatever, And like really secretly, I know that the only time I feel good about myself is when I'm in Uganda because they're just giving me love the whole time. And I'm like, dang, thank God, thank God. And they're like, they have nothing, right? Nothing from an American point of view. They have nothing. I have everything. And they say, Andrea, but God is good. You just pray. You just pray. Andrea, but why do you cry? You just pray. God will give you what you need. They have no parents. They've watched their country be decimated by an epidemic, right? They live in shacks. They have broken shoes. They're cooking by candlelight. I give them my headlamp. It's like, ah, right? Like, oh my God, I can cook and have light with my hands free. I feel like a jerk. And I just sit there and I'm like, give me more. That's the truth, right? That's what it's like. And somehow in that circle, they get their needs met too, because we're putting them through school, right? And that's what they need. They need to get through school. And I need to not feel like a jerk. And I need to feel that God loves me. And I need to feel that people all over the world might have a shot at getting along and all of this like high-level shit that only Americans put themselves through, right? So now, for a long time I was like shooting out these little satellites because I'm a writer and I'm a performer and I'm a photographer. And so I used to have one of those business cards that said writer, performer, photographer, producer. Still says it's not so unlike that now. And for years, like many of you who have multi-dimensional gifts, for years people were like, you really need to pick one. You need to buckle down. You need to, go and like really focus and get in there and like, you're never going to get good at anything, Andrea, if you can't find the one thing that blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden there's this backlash and everyone's like, oh, by the way, you've got to be nimble. You've got to be nimble. You know, machines are really good at doing just one thing really, really well. People have to be nimble now, right? Oh yeah, you're not going to get a job for 20 years. Never mind about a career. What you actually need to be able to do is reinvent yourself. I'm not listening to anybody anymore, right? Because first of all, it's always 10 years behind the curve. And second of all, it doesn't really matter anyway, because the only responsibility I have as a human on this planet is the responsibility to be who I am, to use the gifts that I was given to the best of my ability, and to try to not make it harder for any other human on the planet to do that for themselves. I think that's pretty much my only responsibility. So what can I offer a student? I'm saying that out loud. I'm saying that out loud to every young person I can. I'm telling every young person I can to pursue anything in the universe that makes them curious. Anything. Because I think curiosity is actually the most fundamental thing that we can nurture. We talk about difference, right? So now I have my arts company and I do this. I go and I perform and I talk and I write one-woman shows, which is like, oh, one-woman shows, right? Like that's like the worst thing. In theater, that's like, oh, great. Like, you meet the person who says that they do one-woman or one-man shows and you're like, I really don't want to hang out with that guy. This is so annoying. But you know, it's like until we come up with something else to call it, I don't know what else to say. So anyway, fear me. But so I do that, you know, and I try to make it work. And so for a while I had a wedding photography business because I was trying to make it work and make money and da-da-da-da. And what I've found is like every single time I have made the fearful choice to put down the safe thing and just go with the thing that makes me curious, the world keeps opening up. So now I have my arts company, but I also have a company called the Wayfaring Band. The Wayfaring Band is not a rock band, but it's a band of travelers. And we wayfare around the world. And we work with young adults who experience special needs and emerging thought leaders. And emerging thought leaders is what we call it. It's a fancy made-up term, whatever. All it means is people who are neurotypical, young people who are neurotypical, who are curious about difference and who want a practical skill set for learning about difference. And who are, a lot of times, white kids from the suburbs who just don't want to be an asshole, right? And so they're like, okay, I'm starting to understand that I was born into the power strata, like the power structure at the top. Say it out loud. Talk about it. I was born into the power structure at the top. The only thing I got is that I'm a girl, right? I'm like, that gives me like this much edge in terms of a global population. I'm at the top. So I can either, what I'm trying to do, what we're trying to do with the Wayfaring Band is through the lens of travel, we are trying to practically experience navigating difference as a band of travelers. So we've got our guys with autism, with Down syndrome, with CP, with Fragile X, with all different kinds of genetic stuff that still, every time I'm like, I've never even heard of that one. I'm like, keep it coming, right? There's all kinds of differences. And we all band together and we load up on a bus and we go somewhere like the Badlands, the Black Hills of South Dakota. And we do the tourist stuff, right? We go to Mount Rushmore, and then we go to Crazy Horse, right down the road. And then we have a conversation with our thought leaders about that. We're like, how do you feel about seeing 4 white men carved on the face of a mountain, given now where we are and what we're learning and what we're reading about Crazy Horse and the other Lakota people in the area? What's the context of that? And we have those conversations. And meanwhile, in that soup, here's where it gets fun, and this is where it gets to be real life to me. Is like, it's great to be able to be like, oh, aren't we all so proud of ourselves, patting ourselves on the back, because we know how to talk about the power structure. We're not afraid to talk about race, right? We're not afraid to talk about socioeconomic or immigrant communities, or, you know, not afraid to like say some of those social things out loud and like be like, isn't it complicated, and get in there and like make the academically correct choice, right? But what about when it all fails? What about when it gets really messy? What about when I meet someone who doesn't know that I really care about these things? And as is always the case, I am meeting them with just what I can see, right? What happens when I come in and I know I'm being seen as that white girl, and I'm like noticing, I'm like, I want to tell them every single thing. I want to say, I used to work in Crenshaw. I used to do this. I want to qualify, right? So I feel this need, and with my students, that happens a lot. As a teaching artist, I go into places and I'm there for an hour. I want to qualify myself. I want to show them that I belong. How do I fit in, right? I don't have time to give them my whole resume about people of color and why I can fit in there and still get my job done. So I have to risk being seen as exactly what I am, which is a white girl, and let it go, right? I have to risk being seen and being judged for what I am, which is exactly the experience that everyone in the world is having all of the time. I don't get to qualify, right? So being in my own skin, it's like, welcome. If you're white and you have the experience of feeling your own skin color for a change, welcome to the world that everyone else has been having all along, right? Yeah. Just didn't feel that feeling, right? So, but it's hard because, and especially if, like for me, I'm an extrovert, right? I'm always communicating. I always think that there's a way to communicate my way through something, to show or to tell who I am in such a way that I can fit in. Well, so there it is, right? It's about belonging. I want to belong. I want to belong, you want to belong, you want to belong, you want to belong. We all want to belong. Belonging is really different than fitting in. Fitting in is not going to happen. I'm going to let that one go. I've never fit in. I don't think that fitting in is really that valuable anymore. Hopefully, most of us can learn to let go of our desire to fit in when we leave middle school. It's hard. But, but belonging doesn't go away. The desire to belong doesn't go away. So here are moments that where I get trapped and where I have to practice this thing of letting it go. So I'm in Mount Rushmore, and I have my whole team, and there's a group of 20 of us. So probably the most just guy who operates in the world more differently than the mainstream is this guy Dexter. Dexter experiences autism. He's nonverbal. He understands spoken language. Like, you can talk to him, you can give him verbal communications, and he understands you. It doesn't mean he'll listen to you, right? But he understands you. He's 17. He's very small, very wiry, strong, right? So as long as Dexter wants to keep doing what he's doing, he will keep doing what he's doing. And he doesn't use any words at all, but he'll make some sounds. He'll like ga, 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 and zee, and some other hilarious things. And so because we're on the inn, and Dexter's a really good friend of mine, and I've known him since he was like 12, I call him my alien baby. And this is a good example of something that doesn't read well to the outside world, right? It's like, oh, you can't just like tell everybody, like calling a kid with autism, oh, my alien baby, right? There are these circles, and things get messy, and we have to make choices. But I'm just giving you that. That's actually not where the story is going. I just want you to know that, like, that's one of those things in my head. You're asking, like, thinking about how we always have a hamster wheel. In my hamster wheel, when I'm calling Carter, there you go, there's his real name. Sorry, I still won't tell you his last name. When I'm calling him my alien baby, in my head, I'm like, is it okay to say this or not? Right? These are the moments where I don't have the answer. So we're teachers. We don't have the answer. Oh my God, I don't want the responsibility to have the answer, right? Because all the questions really worth asking are the ones that we all have. So I don't want to be in a position where I have to know, but I'd like to be in a position where I can help navigate, have experience. I can be a captain of a boat and be like, together, let's try and go that way, right? I'd rather be in that position. So we're on the bus, and Carter starts to freak out, okay? And he's very upset, and he doesn't understand, and he wants to go, and all the other guys have gotten off, and they've all gone in, and now we're at Cosmos, which is like this mystery area in South Dakota where everything is sideways and upside down, and the water runs uphill. It's this huge fake tourist trap. Don't go. But it's like we went, we thought it would be fun. So there we are, and everybody else goes inside, and he's freaking out, and he's screaming, and he's throwing things, and we're on the bus, and everyone else is gone, and I'm just with him by myself, and I'm like, hey man, it's cool. And I'm like, do you want to join the group? And he wants to go, and he keeps pointing, he wants to get out, and he wants to get out. And I'm like, if you want to join the group, you will need to put some clothes on, okay? Because he's naked. Because he stripped his clothes off, and he is a 17-year-old boy, completely naked, right? He wears a diaper, so he's wearing a diaper. And he's naked, and he keeps trying to get off the bus and point, and he wants to go in. And I'm stuck, right? Because I believe in difference. I believe that arts and abilities, right? I believe that we have to find a way to reach every single kid, and every single kid is different, and they all deserve our respect and our consideration, and we're going to come at them and be like, yeah, man, whatever you want. But we live in the real world, in which you can't take a 17-year-old naked boy into a public tourist place. That's actually not okay. And just because it might be his preferred experience, It doesn't mean it's the community's preferred experience, right? And in a classroom, just because one of your students has a preferred experience, it might not be the preferred experience in the classroom. It's extremely difficult, I think, to ask teachers to teach for every single student differently. I'm like, welcome to being in a family. If my siblings if we were going to do something and I was the one out, my parents didn't care, right? My parents were like, and I would say, why? Because I said so. Get in the car, okay? Now, nobody seems to have a problem with that when we talk about family, but in a classroom, we have to find a way to differentiate, right? Ooh, differentiation. I believe in it. I believe that we're all different. We all had the experience. We were all different students. We remember being in school, being left behind, being skipped over, having everybody teach to the middle. It sucks. But at the same time, if we try and teach to every single person, then we're spread out and we're not getting anything done either. So these are choices. So guess what? There is no answer. We go to these conferences, we do professional development, we keep thinking maybe some really compelling speaker will tell us the answer. There is no answer, in my experience. There is no way to do it. Sometimes we do it this way, sometimes we do it that way. So there I am with Carter on the bus, and I'm like, dude, you gotta get dressed if you wanna go inside. So what does he do? He rips off his diaper and he throws it at my head. So I go outside. Then he tricks me into locking me off the bus, which was really well done, actually. I really admired it. Because he was like, fine, I'm going to come get dressed, because he'd thrown all his clothes out the window, and he's like, all right, I'm going to come. And I'm like, thank you, let's go. And he comes, and the second I get off the bus, then he's like, argh! And he slams the door, and then I'm locked out. So I'm sitting outside now. He opens the windows of the bus. He starts checking out all the other kids' stuff, right? So there goes the backpack. There goes the driver's backpack. The driver's a nice guy who never did anything to anybody, right? So there goes his backpack. Throws out a backpack with a can of unopened Pepsi. It explodes inside the backpack, so the Pepsi's shooting everywhere. I'm alone, and I'm sitting down, and I sit down on the curb, and I'm like, why am I still pretending like I know what I'm doing? There are these moments, right? Why am I still acting like I have the upper hand here? I don't. I don't know what is going on in his head. I don't know how to stop it. I can't roll with it anymore, and I've run out of platitudes. I have said I see that you're frustrated, and I'd like to help you, that I can't, and I'm out. I've got nothing left to give him. So I sit there, and these are the moments where I'm like, burst into tears, just why me, blah, blah, blah. So the skill that I need in that moment is the skill to hold something lightly, right? The skill to just be okay with the question mark. To just be like, I don't actually have to have this. If I'm not El Capitan in charge of everything, then I'm actually not failing right now. So for me, this goes back to the how and the what. If I'm doing the what, then I know what we're doing, I know when we're going, I know the way, I know all of that stuff. And if something doesn't happen, then I'm failing. But if I'm doing how is we're going to be flexible. How is we're going to try our best. How is we're going to have some sort of a culture of trying to include people and trying to do belonging and things like that. And we're going to try, the how is knitting it all together. We're going to focus on the process of creating community. And then when things go awry and when there's chaos and when there's conflict, then okay, we're in the how of just like, here's how we handle conflict. With patience, with kindness, with space, with reflection later, with me usually moving too fast and then having to slow down. So there are a couple of things in a classroom setting that I use. So it's like, again, let's get back to practical brass tacks. Like, how do I apply this now in a classroom setting? And especially for those of us who are coming in, well, it's both things. It's a challenge if you come in and you're just there for 45 minutes and that's it, right? That's a challenge. It's also really challenging if you're there every single day. And now it's the middle of the year, right? So how do you come in with new strategies in the middle of the year and like be seen and be taken seriously? So for me, there are a couple of concepts, and this is hard. This is like, it isn't as easy as like, okay, here's one piece of curriculum. But to me, it's about a culture of a lateral power structure. So every single time that I'm the gatekeeper to knowledge behind me, and I am there at the bottleneck, right? And I'm trying to guide my students in here through this. Every single time I do that, I am putting all of the pressure at the bottleneck, right? So I am there at the gate. and I need everyone to come through my way and get in this way. Now I am responsible for every single student's success through that gate. And every single student that doesn't make it through the gate, it's because I didn't get them. I didn't work hard enough, right? This is like that real egocentric place that we can get to as teachers sometimes. Like, either I am the best teacher ever and all of my kids are amazing, or I am the worst teacher ever and I failed that student. You're just a person. Move out of the way. You're just a person, right? We're just people. We're just doing our best. And we don't know everything. So instead, it's like, how can we enlist our students as collaborators? How can we create authorship instead of just that receptacle of like, okay, I shall now suck up knowledge. I have one of my best friends is a math teacher. She's like, it's so weird. It's like we're in this position where we're all having to like even wrestle with the ethics of this. Like she's basically giving her students Khan Academy assignments every single day. So Khan Academy is actually teaching her students. And then in class, she is working with the students to answer questions about what they learned, not from their teacher, but online. When I first heard it, I was like, oh, you're cheating, right? That's like my, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, mentality. I'm like, oh, you're cheating at teaching, right? Because you're supposed to do everything as a teacher. You have to have all the answers. You have to be a genius at math, or you're not allowed to teach math. The reason that she wanted to become a math teacher is because math was really hard for her in school. And she thought that she might be able to do an okay job explaining it to other kids. And I'm like, ooh, that really makes me nervous because I'm a perfectionist, right? I don't have the answer, right? No, we don't have the answer. But this is an option. This is one thing that I'm seeing happening now more in classrooms is have Khan Academy teach it, and then the how is sitting down with students and being like, how do we understand it together, side by side? That's interesting to me. It's something to think about, right? So for me, when I work in a classroom, especially as a teaching artist, this is what I do. I go in and I do this thing. It is cheesy, absolutely. I'm very comfortable being cheesy, so that's fine with me. It's not for everyone. But I go in and I say, I don't care if they're, middle or elementary school or all the way up into high school. I'm just like, listen, guys, because a lot of times I do what Annette does. I go in and I do a lot of creative writing exercises where I'm asking students who are not writers to write poetry, and then to read it out loud. And so, writing is one of these things that literacy is the big thing. So there's a lot of opportunity to get plugged into a school for that because there's so much emphasis on literacy. But in a classroom setting, a lot of kids, and especially if it's a school that's a little bit more under-resourced, right, and they're not reading at level and blah, 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 the writing thing is terrifying. Spelling is terrifying. English as a second language learners, it's terrifying, right? So how do we create a safe space to practice literacy? So this is where it comes into where the arts integration to me is just the easiest thing. It's about efficiency. So if I want to get you guys to practice literacy, right, I can drag you all by the hand and pull you through and give you a book and show you this thing and have you read out loud and humiliate yourself in front of the class and do these different things and we can go that route. Or I can build a really big fire, a really, really, really big fire that's really warm and interesting. And you'll come to the fire because you want to get closer to the fire, right? You want to warm your hands at that fire. You want to be near that. So the fire is just art. And it's not, guys, I know we know this, but I want to give you just some more language when you're trying to explain this to other people too. It's I feel when we talk about arts integration, people are like, oh yeah, finger painting in the classroom, totally got it, as if it's just this break. Everybody gets stuck in this idea that it's kindergarten and that arts integration means that you're taking a break from real life to just work out your emotions with some bright colors and then paste it in the window. It's this really condescending approach, I feel that when I try and talk about arts integration with teachers, they're like, I don't have time for that. Because they always think it's a break from what they're actually trying to do, right? So to me, I'm the whole key, and I'm like this too, if you're running a classroom, efficiency is everything. Tell me a way to do it faster, better, and with less effort on my part, and then I'm in, right? If you can save me time, and if you can actually make it easier, get me out of meetings with my administrators, and off of email chains with 100 other people, if you can do that, this is what I hear my sister talking about. Email chains, meetings, right? Whole staff sit-downs, this, no offense, we love this, but it's there's sometimes it works and sometimes there's that one that you're okay, there goes a day of my life that I don't feel I could take anything out of. So if we can get people out of that, then it's like, yeah, I'm in. So we use it to build a fire. So art in any way, it means that art becomes the how, not the what. Art as the what is, here's some finger painting, and let's talk about it. Art as the how is, we're going to tell a story about this thing. So we're going to talk about, I was hearing earlier, they were talking about after Annette's workshop, we're going to talk about, like for Thanksgiving, who was saying that they wanted to talk about traditions? Somebody in here? Amelia? Okay. So she was saying that one of the things that they do around Thanksgiving is they have to talk about traditions, right? They're going to talk about family. They're going to talk about, the roles that people play and like how we're all culturally different and our communities are different. So using Annette's workshop to talk about that, using it as a vehicle, is like basically taking the thing that you want to study, slapping it onto a giant ball, and then pushing it off a hill. And then it just rolls down the hill, and everybody's on, right? So it's like, we use this with fundraising all the time. I will never fundraise without art, ever. Because I'm getting an email, it's like, please help the starving people, blah, 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 blah. How many emails like that do you get every single day? That was like the 80s, right? It was Save the Children, it was crying Africans with tears and distended bellies and flies. It was trying to get our sad thing of like, oh, you have so much, they have so little. We're inundated, we're done. We have all the data in the universe. We're filled with data. Information by itself no longer works. No one cares. We are competing with the best advertisers in the universe. We are competing for our people's attention with Coors, right? And like Sports Illustrated magazine, and like these people who spend billions of dollars on learning what gets people's attention. And then we're trying to keep their attention with like pull-down maps and like, I mean, oh my God, we're so screwed, right? And we look out there and the best artists in the world are working for them. Because that's where they get paid the money, right? So why wouldn't you want to bring an artist into your classroom? To me, I'm like, we come in like, I know that it's hard because so many of us came from this place where we were the outcasts. We were told that we were different. We were told that our skill set didn't fit, that we wouldn't be able to make a living, right? That we would be starving forever and poor and we would be the outliers. This is where it's actually our responsibility to change the story. We're the ones they want now. They're not saying it with that language, but that is what the behavior of the whole world is showing. They want the people who can make it sexy, who can make it stand out, who can make it interesting and shiny and fast and efficient and clean. That's who they want, they being everyone in the world, right? They want us. Students want us too. We are easier to use than Google, actually, because we're better at how we get through it, not what. You can put in what you want to know, but how do you make sense of all of that, right? So I enlist my students as collaborators. We put them on the sides, and I'm like, okay, guys, we need to imagine that we're all up in a tree, okay? We're all up in this really big tree, and I am one person, and ye are many. And so by myself, I cannot keep 25 or 35 in many classrooms, right? I can't keep 35 kids in a tree all by myself. I don't have enough arms. And if they fall, the reason we're in a tree is because we need gravity, right? So if they fall down, they're going to get hurt. And so I'm like, I need you guys to help keep us all in the tree. And I call kids out when they're not doing their part, right? So we're reading out loud and somebody reads and I hear somebody snicker. And I have to address it now. This is not because anti-bullying is super important. This is because that person is knocking someone else out of the tree. It's not, we gotta get rid of these buzz phrases of like anti-bullying and blah, blah, blah. Everyone knows a bully is bad. They don't know what a bully is. My 5-year-old niece and nephew are twins. They talk about bullying. They don't understand what it means, but they know that they're not supposed to do it, right? These are the same kids that Isabella, she's 5. She's like, we're standing at an outdoor place having breakfast. And we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden she screams like only little kids can. And she points across and she goes, "A tiny man!" And I'm like, whip my hair, and I'm like, what is she looking at? And I see nothing. And she's still riveted. I'm like, what are you talking about, Isabella? And she's like, just wait. And sure enough, across the street, behind a parked car on the side of the road, a little person comes out from the other side of the car, is walking down the street. And from across the street, she can tell that it's an adult and not a child, that it's a little adult and not a child. And she's just staring. And I'm like, oh yes, like this is it. This is the moment of life, like where we all learn these lessons. My mother and my sister-in-law, who I'm with, immediately, Isabella, don't stare. Isabella, put your hand down. Don't point. That's a little person. I think they might have actually used the word dwarf. I'm like really conscious about language because of my line of work, but they probably said, that's a dwarf, blah, 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 which is not inaccurate. But, and that was it, right? So now a 5-year-old gets to just sort of try and figure out what that was all about. Now, what lesson have we learned? We've learned not to point, and we've learned not to stare, and nothing else. We have zero information to move forward with. This is why people are paralyzed of difference, because we actually never teach each other what to do, right? We don't teach each other how to ask questions. My friend has muscular dystrophy. He wears braces. He walks around, all of the adults just like look him right in the eye. It's almost like, with the women, you're like, don't look at her boobs, don't look at her boobs, don't look at her boobs. And he's just like, looking right in the eye, just like, oh, he doesn't have braces. He's just the same. We're all the same. It's fine. Little kids are like, dude, what's with your legs? And he's like, so glad you asked, man. Let me talk to you about muscular dystrophy. These are options. I know we're all socialized to believe that we have to behave a certain way. In a classroom, we learn to shame kids who are mean, but we don't give them information to change. So we have these bullies. Now, this is a dangerous word now. I don't like it when I hear people talk about bullying. And everyone assumes I'll like it because I work with a special needs population, right? So everyone's like, oh, you're going to love this anti-bullying stuff. I'm like, why? Because you basically created a word that's so bad that's like the word Hitler, right? It's like, oh, here's a word that's not a man. This is a thing. This is a monster. This is a disease. But we're talking about real people here. Real people that we're labeling bullies and just shaming them without giving them any information about how to not be that way. So when I put all the kids up in the tree and I have somebody snicker, I use the tree as this metaphor, and I keep coming back to it because for me it's easier. Like, I've never in my life seen anybody change because they were shamed into doing it. I don't think it works. I don't think it works to make somebody feel bad about what they've done. I think it just makes them get really good at hiding it or like putting it down or like pushing it away, but not fundamental change and growth. Right? I think that can only come from fostering a culture where it's okay to be uncomfortable, which is decidedly anti-American. Man, we do not know how to do that here. But the good thing is that while the bigger culture is always at work, we can create our small culture. We can create the culture of a classroom. We can create the community that exists in one day as a guest artist, right? If you are a leader and you are an administrator of a school, that is, to me, you're in a difficult spot. And I, as somebody who has like the general sort of personality, it's very challenging. Leadership for me is very, very challenging. Trying to figure out when do you step up and say, and now I'm making a decision, and when do you let everybody kind of come to the table and try and like have that lateral collaborative point of view. It's very hard. And I think for me, the first thing is just like letting go of the idea that you're always going to get it right. There is no one way to do it, right? Every situation calls for something different. But in the same way that as a teacher in a classroom, if I'm always coming down on my students, they'll learn to like toe the line. But that's not a metric I don't know if they're actually learning the content, right? They just learn how to behave the way I want them to. I see this a lot as a white teacher working in classrooms of color. So a lot of times, white teachers who are not used to being around communities of color, I think many of us grew up with different ideas about chaos. Right? So in white, particularly WASP white culture, which is where I come from, Irish Catholic, right? Like, yes, in the bigger, greater family, it's like alcoholic, dysfunctional, blah, 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 whatever. Insert your thing right here. But like, in general, the tolerance for major American white culture for noise and disruptive and stuff like that is very low, right? Just slightly higher than Asian culture. Asian culture, it's like very contained, very quiet, very much like towing the line. White culture, we're just above that. We can do a little bit more like bubbling, right? But we like to, when we go, hey, we expect it to fall in line immediately. If you don't know this, brown culture is not like that. Latino culture and black culture, in my experience, it's not like that. And so as a white teacher, if I'm coming into a brown classroom and I'm trying to put, why should my one person cultural experience be the mandate for a classroom of 35 other people? This is, again, there are no answers here, but when I come in now, and if I'm coming into a classroom of color, I don't also assume that it's like the same classroom of color as the last one I was in, but I have to come in And I have to listen. So again, it's not having the answer, but it's coming in and being like, what's the new question? That's my question each time. What's the new question today? Who are these kids today? What's this culture today? Because almost always, I'm the guest. There's differences depending on if you're running your show or if you're the guest, right? But I'm almost always the guest. So I have to come in with my guest mentality and learn about that culture and then come in, again, it's all about lateral. The old model of top-down. Most of the stuff, I know as I say it, you guys are like, yeah. So it's not about like illuminating brand new truths, but I think sometimes it's just like, we have to catch up and just realize like, oh yeah, this change happened and I just didn't really ever say it out loud before. I didn't ever realize like that's an adjustment I want to make. So in the setting of a classroom, I'm just going to check, we're almost there. In the setting of a classroom, I want to know like, how can I have roles, real roles, to help me? Because I actually am not really good at this. My baseline for leadership will always be to make decisions and to delegate, boom, 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 boom. That's my baseline. I'm that type of a leader. And it's very easy for me to come in and just rattle through everything and boom, make a decision. I am really finding that that does not work for me and moving forward in the kind of community that I want to build and the kind of culture I want to be a part of in this world and the type of belonging that I want to experience in this world, that I can't do that. So I have to create strategies that help me do something different. So I'll give like tasks. I have different students at different tables. Your job is that you are the author of this particular thing. You're the architect. Use a lot of words that like have responsibility, right? But not necessarily like you're the president, you're the vice, you're the secretary. It's like, let's get rid of it. I'm like, you're the architect, you're the engineer, you're the artist. Your job is making sure that your project as a group here has something better. Like you're gonna focus on the storytelling. You're gonna focus on the parts. You're gonna focus on this and giving them all a chance to switch, right? Or like you're the question of the day. Every single student has to come in with a question every single day. That there's a new question, and you're going to spend the first 5 minutes of class addressing a question, just to remind ourselves that in our quest for answers, we also have to learn how to hold questions. These are just like, off the top of my head ideas. But those are the types of things I have to put in, those like actual things, or I'll just fall, if I'm tired, which let's talk about it. If you're a teacher, you're always tired, period. If you're in education, you're always tired. You've never felt refreshed in your life. So, at least, especially not any classroom teachers. Like maybe that first thing in the morning you're having a good day and just one kid comes rolling in like Sonic the Hedgehog and you're just like, forget it, it's over. But so for me, like that's why I need those strategies. I need that scaffolding to fall back on because again, I'm human and that's okay. That's okay. For me, I grew up wanting to be a magician, right? Not like a magic magician, but like actually magic. Like I'm a kid of the 90s, okay? Buffy and Charmed. Like I wanted to be able to do magic. And I want to be the best teacher that ever changed the life of a student. And I had to learn the hard way that that was going to kill me and it was going to provide nothing for the people I was trying to impact. So now I'm trying to be a human. And when I think about like what do I have to offer a student, instead of trying to offer them this idea that it's all going to be okay, that every single person is special, that you can do what you put your mind to, these things that sound really, really nice but have not been my experience, what I would rather give a student today is you can keep learning as long as you stay curious, you have a shot at getting in there. Being human is enough. There are no monsters. There are no magicians. Everyone makes choices. We have to be responsible for our choices. We can learn how to reflect. That's something we don't do. It's not very American either. We just kind of barrel through. We don't stop and reflect on our choices. So like building some kind of reflection in, I think can be really powerful. Those are all the things like, for me also, and this is, and being okay with the fact that like we do it for ourselves too. Like, yeah, we all got into education. We all want to make a difference. We all want to change the world. Cute, nice, right? But like what else? I want to live a life worth living. I want to live a life with no regrets. I want to have an interesting life. I want to be challenged by the people that I encounter every day. I want to be surprised. I want to be wrong and have the experience of surviving that. Because of course I don't want to be wrong. But it feels great to survive the experience of being wrong and to not have it kill me. I want that skill set. That feels like a skill set worth having. And I want to help be an ambassador for people who are not part of the mainstream. I am a part of the mainstream, and I don't feel like I am. And that's like my little internal conflict. And I think everything I do in the world is about trying to sort that out. Is I've never felt like I belong, but according to the power structure, I am 100% in the main line. And so I have that feeling of being divided from the experience. And I just want to get out there, understand other kids who are having it, and try and find better ways for people to feel included. We have a hashtag in our company, the Wayfaring Band. Our hashtag is everybody in. And we use it to represent moments of radical inclusivity that we see at work in the world. And in my experience, radical inclusivity is never comfortable, but it always feels right. How does that work, right? But it's never quite, it's never easy. Nobody is the mainstream if we're all radically in, but it always feels right because then there's room for everybody, right? And that's the kind of world I want to be a part of. So I'm going to open up. We have very little time, but before you guys break, but I just want to give you a chance to ask some questions or offer observations or stories that you have in your own experience, something that struck a chord, anything. Scene. Yes.
Aside from your shows, how else do you incorporate your use of theater in whether you're teaching? Because you talked a little bit about your creative writing, but I was wondering if you also utilize.
Totally. I mean, anytime that I'm teaching anything, I'll use like the energy ball game. It's a theater game. It's real simple, but basically, and I don't care how old they are either. The older kids hate it. But I love to make the older kids hate things because they crave it, they want it. But yeah, it's just like a super simple strategy. Like if people come back and they're like crazy after recess, like this is a strategy, something when everybody's like just bouncing off the walls, or it's Friday and it's like, God, you're not getting anything done, and I'm getting angry and they're getting crazy, and it's like we're heading for this because this is like the place we've all been there, and you're just heading for that. Like, I'll put everybody up in a circle. Theater is the best way to burn steam. Put everybody up in a circle, and then I'm just like this, and I'm like, what's this? Okay. Here we have it. And they're like, here we go. I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm like, get over it. You can't look cool all the time. To me, I'm like, I would rather not look cool and get what I want than look cool all the time. So I've got my fake little energy ball and I'm checking it out. Middle school down, and this is like super hilarious. The middle schoolers, you know what they're like. The little kids are so in from the second you start. The middle schoolers are like kind of in, but like the guys have to check and blah, blah, blah. And the girls are just sitting there like totally zombies. Like, if I don't move, no one will know I'm here. How middle school girls are. And then the high schoolers, it's just like, so it just sort of depends. But anyway, I start anyway, and I'm like, okay, check it out. I'm like, here it is, caught it, good. And I'm not great at mime. I don't care, nobody cares, they get it, right? And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna expand it, whoa. All right, and I'm like, let's make it a little bit bigger. And I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna give this to you now, and then whoever's next to me, and try and like put yourself next to a kid that's just like, you can start with the class clown, right? Like, use that energy. That kid that's like always a pain in your ass, like use it, because he's gonna be more concerned with making everyone laugh, but he'll do it, right? So give it to him, and I'm like, you've gotta change it, do something with him. He's like, whatever. And then, he has to change it and throw it up, and blah, 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 and then he's given it to the next kid. And then the next kid takes it, and they're like, and then, some of them do it kind of crappy, and then they just hand it over, and that's fine. And then they take it, and they change it, and they're bouncing like a basketball. But suddenly, here's why it's important. Everyone has a single point of focus, right? Suddenly, everyone, it's coming in. It's still wild. We're still on our feet. We're still using our energy. But everyone's watching a fake ball, right? I'm like, hello. And so they're watching the fake. And if it's like kind of needs a little juice, then I'll get into it. And I'll take it. I'll come and reassert myself, take it, and eat it, right? And I'm like, right? You have to be the one. And then throw it all up on the kid next to you, right? Because they're just so like, God, like you're just so, and you just have to be like, guys, like there are moments, where I'm like, it's okay, like, can you burp it out? Can you do something that they're like, if I try and stay precious, then anything can shatter me, right? I am not interested in being precious. I do not need to be up on a shelf, the teacher that cannot be knocked down, because I will be knocked down. Right? So I'm like, get messy and find moments when it's okay, because I have found that in my classrooms at least, when I am like that in moments, then when I need attention, I can really easily make that switch. I can come back around. And by the end of it, I'm the last one too, so I take it, and then it's not that hard. With a little bit of theater, you can even have it. And I'm looking at it so hard, and I'm moving it around, and I'm making it so tiny. And then I just, poof. If you don't change your gaze and you take it seriously, they're all sitting there. They're just sitting there. Even high schoolers are sitting there, they're looking at it, and I'm like, okay, it's going over you. And I was like, don't move, don't shake it off. Everyone go back to your desk. Do not shake it off. Do not, and then I'm like, give them a hard time because they're like, you're so stupid, Miss Moore, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're shaking it off. Good. Sit down very quietly. Everybody very quietly, very quietly. Good. And now get out your book and open it to page 56. Whatever. Look at you. Right? That's theater. It's just watching someone be crazy. Okay, that's all it is. But that's like a super short one, but like that's one I use a lot. If they're coming in with this and I just need to like get a handle on it, then I do that. It's just like putting it here. Delivering a power baby. That's one that my high schoolers give me. My high schoolers give me a hard time because I talk about performance and I talk about when your energy's here and I show how girls stand and how they turn themselves into pretzels and how boys stand and and we do all this stuff and I'm like, so I make them do this thing where we just physically, we're just like, okay, we're gonna put our feet right under here, we're gonna roll our shoulders back, we're gonna open this, and I'm like, oh my God, some of you have boobs, don't panic. Because this is like what I say it all out loud. Like this is a cultural thing for your classroom, but I'm like, here we are, good. And I'm like, okay, and we're going to lengthen our spine. We're going to draw a golden thread up to the ceiling. Good, here we are. And then they start to, and I'm like, right back up, right? Don't sink into that hip. Good, and we're going to breathe. And we do this. And then they're all, and I'm like, because you guys, you have to draw your energy from the floor if you want to deliver a power baby. And they're just like, they just think I'm a freak. But it's, but I'm like, we talk about that, like, what do you do when all of your energy is in your pockets? Right? Your energy's in your pockets or in the kink of your neck or in trying to hide your boobs or trying to like look shorter if you're a guy. Like the guys always stand like this, And it's just like, so we practice things like that and it's so uncomfortable for them. But they start focusing on their bodies and how to stand and like, are they doing it right? And blah, blah, blah. And like, they get quiet. It's just about controlling focus, I think. So long. I know I can't answer a question shortly. Oh my gosh. Anybody else? We have 5 minutes and you have a break, okay? So don't worry. It's not like we're cutting into your break. No? I feel like I covered a lot of ground, like here and here and here and here. You guys are welcome to get in touch with me. You can email me or, find me. I'm Andrea Moore Arts on Twitter, Instagram, and blah, blah, blah. And if you want to reach out to me or if you have a question, anybody can email me anytime and just ask more specific things. I have like little curriculum things. But to me, I guess in my experience, the thing I always hope to leave people with is like, I believe that this is not as simple as like, and I know we all know that, but it isn't as simple as just finding that one thing that you love, like that one piece of curriculum, that one lesson plan. It's a culture shift. It's about having a culture of saying yes and also a culture of saying, I don't know. Yes and I don't know are the two most important responses to any question, in terms of like how we behave. The no, this one is not as useful to me anymore. Shame and no are the two things that I think are creating some real jerks in our young population. So I guess, and that too, just in terms of the bully thing, like that is something I don't know if anyone else is saying. I haven't heard a lot of other people talking about that, but I guess I want to light up your awareness a little bit about bullying and about just reminding ourselves that this is weird. Bullies are people too. But I want to light us up because I know where those bullies end up, right? When we get marked like that, when we get that mark on us, that's where, go look at our prisons. That's where all the bullies end up. And I don't know, I'm not convinced that all those people need to be there. Or they become CEOs of corporations. That's where they end up. Those are the two places they end up. Very extreme. Let's bring everybody back to center and find a way to live together. Anyway, I'll let you guys go a few minutes early, but thank you very, very much. I really am so grateful to have been here. Thank you.